queer local bookstore called Under the Umbrella, as well as another one called Legendarium, which is all fantasy and sci-fi books.
Cool. We have a bookstore in Long Beach called Page Against the Machine, and I've always been, very happy about that name. But that's Long Beach in a nutshell.
It's a great name, Page Against the Machine. What's the name of it's called Umbrella, the one in?
Under the Umbrella.
I've heard of that bookstore for good things.
They're so great. Yeah. Oh, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't plug the Salt Lake City Public Library, which was just named one of the top 20 libraries in the world.
Wow.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Salt Lake represent. Wow.
Yeah.
It's actually incredible.
All right, folks, we are now live. So I'm going to go ahead and start our recording. Excellent. Welcome, Internet, and our little Zoom committee here to Poets in Pajamas, episode 170, brought to you by Sundress Publications. We are gathered here today with the amazing, blessed task of sharing poetry in the comfort of our PJs in our own homes, trying to make craft work accessible to you wherever you are. Today, we feature the work of C.E. Janecek and Charles Jensen, two incredible poets who Gardner and I have been so excited to hear read, quite specifically. So this is going to be one for the ages. If you need any extra accessibility in terms of reading the pieces that are read tonight, please direct an email to poetsinpajamas@gmail.com, and we can send over physical copies of the poems that will be read tonight. Aside that, we will go ahead and get started with our first reader, the incredible Charles Jensen. Charles Jensen wrote Splice of Life, a memoir in 13 genres, forthcoming in May 2024 from Santa Fe Writers Project. His most recent collection of poetry is Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing. His previous books include 2 collections of poetry and 7 chapbooks of cross-genre work. The City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs designated him a 2019 to 2020 Cultural Trailblazer, and he is the recipient of the 2020 Outwrite Nonfiction Chapbook Award, 2018 Zócalo Poetry Prize, a Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Prize, the 2007 Frank O'Hara Chapbook Award, and the Artist Project Grant from the Arizona Commission on the Arts. His poetry has appeared in American Poetry Review, Crab Orchard Review, The Journal, New England Review, and Prairie Schooner, and essays have appeared in 45th Parallel, American Literary Review, Exposition Review, The Florida Review, and Passages North. He founded an online poetry magazine, LOCUSPOINT, which explored creative work on a city-by-city basis. He hosts The Write Process, a podcast in which one writer tells the story of crafting one work from concept to completion. Y'all should check it out. He lives in Long Beach and directs the writers program at UCLA Extension. Charles, please take it away whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and have some poetry in my Sunday. I'm going to start by reading some poems from Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing, which is what I like to call Formally Adventurous, a collection. And I'm going to start with a poem called The Rapture Has Been Postponed Until Further Notice. This was inspired by the weirdness in the world right after September 11th, how there were no planes in the sky and everything was very quiet. So I carried that memory forward to this. Somewhere in Jerusalem, a tree continues to grow. The seas give up plans to turn blood red, wave invitingly toward shore. The locusts then are never born. The weatherman says to plan a beautiful weekend for hiking. Someone later sees 4 horsemen in a small town tavern drinking beer, too drunk to speak. 4 horses parked outside, still as a broken carousel. The omen no one saw gives up and goes back home, heats up a TV dinner, and sulks. The grasses break their fever and can't bring themselves to burn. The earth suppresses a dangerous quake with a little Pepsid AC and some ice cream. Those who had planned to be raptured instead attend that evening's PTA meeting. In Los Angeles, clouds of smog tease themselves apart like cotton, letting sunlight through. The Oscars will be held as previously planned. A crafty dermatologist lances the last boil, and the boil afflicted take to the streets to dance. The lepers gather up their extremities and buy up all the units in a foreclosed co-op. The babies once bound for limbo release their bowels and sing. Thank you. When I was much younger, I had a crush on a boy my age, and we just like it never really worked. Like we were like ships in the night, like our lives were constantly on different trajectories. But there was a moment where he was like, "Hey, let's go have a picnic," and I was like, "Oh, this is finally going to happen." And so we went on this gorgeous picnic, and about halfway through, I realized this is never going to happen. And it was a huge bummer. So that's what this poem is about. It has an epigraph from Jory Graham, which says, "I own you," said the old feeling. Spring prayer. Picnic, grass, cattails stirring muck in spring's breeze. Blanket, scattered items, crumbs. The magic light of afternoon, sun, honey on his skin. We will never be lovers now, this day confirms it. Loons on the nearby lake paddle, coo that haunting call, like what the heart would say should we ever give it words. I have known his skin's scent, texture, stubble as woolen as the blanket we share, mouth with a unique, unforgettable taste. But kisses, skin aren't the conversation today. Spring around us, lying about rebirth, the animals secretly mating, parting. They feel no longing, do they? God, make me an animal now. Give me this emptiness. There's a bunch of poems in this book that are written in the form of a reading comprehension exam. They look like this. So there's a paragraph and it's followed by 4 questions to the reader. Please don't experience stress as I read these poems. You're not being graded, though you are invited to respond to the questions as prompts if you like. So I'm just going to read a few of these. Dissection. For a time, I believed people could hear my thoughts. How else did they know my most private desires? The reluctance in my heart when I looked too long at a boy in my class. There was no privacy then. I remember the anatomical model in biology class, the clear skin whose organs, color-coded, could be removed for study. The way the children tore each one out and tossed them back and forth, laughing, disgusted. I wanted their freedom, the way they never needed to learn anything about themselves. Quiz on this section. A, briefly explore the difference between the terms public and private. B, write down the names of 3 people you victimized as a child. C, why has God forsaken his children? Atheists only, why have you forsaken God? D, if freedom isn't free, calculate its unit cost based on the information in the passage. I like putting a little fake math in that poem. This is called memory. My family has always curated the museum of past wrongs. Expert now allege it has more exhibits than even the Smithsonian. In fact, there are so many, you could visit one each day and never see the whole collection before you die. My wing of the museum is very dark, and I don't like to spend a lot of time in there. It smells faintly of old fruit and basil leaves. For many years, I slept in there, among the ruins of myself and everything I thought was true. I'd touch a piece of glass and see my own fingers appear on the other side, so I was never alone. Quiz on this section. A, what is your favorite exhibit in the museum described in the passage? B, will this narrator ever be able to truly love another human being? C, skip this item if you are a resident of the District of Columbia. All others insert a $5 suggested donation. D, describe a place you visited that was always cold. All right, here's my last quiz poem. There's a lot of science in these. I don't know how that happened. I don't love science. This is called The Water Cycle. Mythologies attribute destruction to an elemental force we can't see coming. Fire, flood, rivers thick with the red salt of blood. But what about the whisper, the one we make inside the ear of the man we love when we tell him our time together's done? Breath and words a lattice work of ruin. Imagine the cloudless sky that makes rain. We don't know why it falls, but then it does. I lay my body down upon a hotel bed and told him though I loved him, I could not be with him. There was a desert outside where it never rains, but when it does, it floods. The desert doesn't know what to do with water, so the water rushes away to someone who does. Quiz on this section. A, identify 3 grand spiritual narratives alluded to by the narrator in this passage. B, is it more or less difficult to be a homosexual? Be honest. C, draw a diagram of the nitrogen cycle. D, who is the villain of this story and every story? I think I've got one more from the book. This poem was written, I used to work at a performing arts school in the marketing department, and my colleague, like me, like really loves like information garbage. So just like useless things that don't help you to know. So she shared this fact with me, and this poem is dedicated to her. So she leaned out of her cube one day and she said the title to me. Only 13 blimps remain on Earth. Blimps are the manatees of the sky, slow, fat, docile. A group of blimps is called a fantasy. A wild blimp can travel 200 miles a day with help from kind winds. Only 13 blimps remain on Earth. Surviving blimps live alone in captivity. Blimps seem unafraid of human contact. Blimps appear in the sky any time of year. A blimp's largest organ is its one sac lung. A fantasy of blimps will never again gather in our sky. The moon is thought to be jealous of their spectacle. Blimps are not permitted to mate with other blimps. They live a monastic life. Humans and time are the blimp's only predators. When a blimp dies, remaining blimps sense this loss, and they, for a short time, refuse the sky. We cannot be sure if blimps believe in heaven. Also, that poem gets extra points because I use the moon in it. For poets, that's a big thing. All right, so I'm going to read 3 new poems. This poem is inspired by the poet Seamus Faye. You may know them as S. Faye, who has a poem about Rilke that I am obsessed with. And so I wrote this poem in response to that poem, and it's dedicated to both of them. This is called Letter to a Younger Poet. If you're reading this, it's already too late to back out now. You're a poet, a crocus reaching from the soil to pluck the sun from its nest in the sky. You told someone you love the moon, but couldn't say why beyond ancient and glowing and lunacy. You hear the chugging of a freight train in the cashier's voice when they hand you change and say, have a lovely day. People will ask if you were born this way. You were. Or if your parents somehow failed. They did. And your confidence that 2 things can be true dooms you to a life of rearranging commas over the course of several hours only to put them back where you had them the first time. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Others before you have survived the assault of mock orange, the blackbird's twitching black eye surveilling you from the emerald foliage, the redhead down the street who eats men like air. Your found family understands you. Never tell a soul of your avocation. Consider it a secret identity, as though you were a hero to nothing more than language itself. Each day you'll stain pages with ink as those like you have done for centuries. Much of it won't be worth reading. Much of it you'll discover is just a mirror. So gaze into it. Discover the layers of self within yourself, the many voices. When the crocus blooms, bees investigate the crime with their yellow and black caution. They pull nothing from the bud but their own discovery. The pollen clung to them with the strength of unshakable faith. Poets call this part of the poem epiphany. I'm working on a book right now that is kind of equal parts love poems for Los Angeles and love poems for my boyfriend. So this is one of the latter, and an epithalamion, which is one of the hardest words to say, is a poem that is written for a wedding. So this is epithalamion on the beach for my future husband. My feet sink into sand at water's edge. The awkward gravity of wave like a stranger, taking my hand, guiding me to a door. I love the place where land and ocean meet, where one is a scar for the other, but both of them claim the whole wound. How do I tell my love this is what marriage is? And I'm going to end on one more love poem. This title's probably going to change. Right now it's called Kiss Litany. It used to be called We're Gross, but I decided that was really not the vibe of the poem. So here goes. Kiss Litany. We kiss before we fall asleep. We kiss when the other has finally woken up. We kiss in the closet when one of us isn't wearing pants and the other doesn't want to. We kiss when neither of us are wearing pants, and pants are not critical to the phenomenology of kissing. We kiss when one of us is still a little pissed off after the argument ends because a kiss is a little like glue and it puts us back together. We kiss at the wedding, but not when it would upstage the people getting married. We kiss at the beach, and once we even kissed on a gondola, and once we kissed on the giant Ferris wheel overlooking Elliott Bay, and we kissed at Six Flags like we were teenagers who exist only to kiss at theme parks. We kissed at Not Scary Farm and inside Club 33 at Disneyland too, which is a very expensive place to kiss. We didn't pay. We kiss on the airplane and we kiss in the Uber, and then we christen the hotel room with a kiss that really deserves a capital K for how much work it's doing. We kissed in my father's house and my brother's house and your aunt's house, and we kissed in the parking lot at the cemetery where your parents are inurned. We kissed after I visited my mother's ashes in Sun City West, and I cried as hard as I did when she died 11 years earlier. And we kissed as I wished she could have known you. We kiss in Palm Springs, our favorite place to kiss. Sometimes by the pool and sometimes at the little gay bars, trying so hard. It's hard to think of places we haven't kissed. Russia, for sure, and never when we thought a kiss might jeopardize our safety. And that's the funny thing about being gay sometimes. A kiss can get you killed if you do it where someone doesn't want you to. But we kiss everywhere else. And we kiss for everyone who wants to but hasn't yet, and all the people who used to and still want to, and anyone who never did. There's a lot of kissing the world needs from us. But when I'm kissing you, it's just for you. And honestly, it's for me too. I'm going to kiss you after I read you this poem, and this poem is also another very important kind of kiss. Thank you.
Ooh. Ooh. Almost lost composure there. Oh, wow. From blimp devastation to the kiss of all kisses, we have now covered the entire spectrum of poetry. Blimps and kissing, that's it, folks. We get a little bit of moon occasionally and sometimes a manatee. Oh, Charles, thank you so much. Oh, what a pleasure. Um, I see all of you in our little participants chat. I know you got craft questions for Charles, so go ahead and write them down. We will be primed to ask questions for both poets after our next reader's fabulous reading, who I will now introduce, that being the unforgettable C.E. Janecek. C.E. Janecek is a Czech American writer and freelance editor who holds a poetry MFA from Colorado State University. C.E. is currently pitching their debut manuscript, The Tender Organs, and is working on their next project, a full eco-poetic sonic crown. Janecek's writing has appeared in Poetry, Gulf Coast, Sugar House Review, and elsewhere. Read more online at www.cewritespoems.com. CJ, whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction. And Charles, those were some incredible poems. I'm honored to be reading alongside you here today. To start us off, something a little local to Salt Lake City, a poem that was first published in Sugar House Review. And it is a bit sad, but we're gonna have a spectrum of emotions here today. The Circumference of Grief, for Selena. Bone china has the greatest strength and resilience of all ceramics, with the addition of bone ash to its raw materials. The texture and appearance are opaque, and the color is snow white. The clerk sets it rim down. We're not allowed to do this anymore, but fits the ball of her foot into the porcelain divot, holding her in the air by its circumference of bone dust. Your ashes scattered where I will never climb, my skin prone to heat stroke, aural flashes of vision, shorting in high desert, the mirage of your company as the light slices, then scatters over snowmelt. Draining down the arms of a lake, an aerial view of a body's inhalation. I imagine, I don't dare ask how. Oh, were my shoulders truly made of clay, I would hold myself between two mirrors, search for the imprint of your palm, cupping the blade in the snowmelt, the only photo of us, by proxy. My dog slumped in your arms, grizzle-mawed and nascent, tumor in her belly, and you, stretched taut and loose at once, muscles demonstrating how the snow melts on the mountainside. My freckles root in the dermis, dark hairs sprouting clusters like fern and thistle around us, too early in the spring, too early for our leg hair to stretch toward the sun. Did I never tell you? As flowers do. Right, this next poem is, the next two are actually from kind of like my ongoing obsession with sonnets and sonnet crowns. This first will be a selection of the first three sonnets in the full crown, followed by, oh wait, actually no, the next one is not a sonnet crown, I lied, but this one is from the first three. Achromatic crown. Who notices the tide of gray wash over the first hair? A dog's twitching whiskers turning to fog, reaching their eyes milky and smiling. A clutch of grass torn from the earth, severed, it browns from the root. I don't remember when my parents' hair softened into leaves, jet black, then colorless. How does noticing unhinge from time? I found my first white hair and couldn't stop looking. The order of graying, nose hairs, hair on the head, the beard, the body, and the eyebrows coming last. Who can tell me the symbolism of having a pure white pubic curl at 25? Maybe it's for the joy of saying, see if you can find it. See if you can find it, the pale root of an older woman's hair. I grew up around women who insisted on aging invisibly, white becoming steel blue, gray conjured into technicolor poppies. When I was small, I thought dyeing was called a pour-over, turning it brown again, like coffee. I'll never understand what it means to be a woman aging, raking her hands through my hair, saying, "You're too short, you're too young to cut it so short. Keep it long while you can." Long, before the desire path thins the grass of my scalp. I drag my hand through the grass, call my gender the wind and the earth. My hands in the grass, my gender the wind and the earth crossing on desire lines. I can't imagine being old enough to remember my first haircut. At 3 months, infants can differentiate male and female faces. By 6, girls spend their time with girls, boys with boys. Children start saying stupid things like, "I need a haircut before I start looking like a girl." And I, the babysitter with a 2-inch buzz, tell an 8-year-old boy that hair has no gender. When I was his age, I was more tree than boy or girl. I'd press my face up close to the bald cypress, while feral children snuck in to tear away long strips of peeling bark. I cried at the sap, thickening beneath the premature scab. Right, this poem is kind of like written in the same time as these sonnet crowns I've been doing, and it's also a newer piece. And it is a failed ekphrasis, though you get to decide whether it's failed or not. Johannes Vermeer, The Glass of Wine, 1658 to 1661. Attempt 1. Describe the image. A man and a woman and an empty glass. Attempt 2. What else is there? A stained glass window, milk-white jug, checkered floor, and the kind of chair I used to change the batteries in fire alarms. Attempt 3. What are they doing? Am I meant to make a story of the plastic arts? There are 1,000 different doings in an image. The models find ways of acceptable movement, unfocusing their eyes on the coral sateen like the uterine pink sunrise on a foggy Dutch morning. Under the coarse wool cape, one rubs his fingerprints together until he can see the grooves behind his eyelids like the veins of fresh chopped firewood. The fire pushes and pulls open window like bellows, and maybe below, a dog barks in the courtyard because the woman who is no courted lady but Vermeer's cook, and yet she hasn't thrown the burnt shells to the hungry hounds yet. Attempt 4. What are they feeling? Didn't I just answer? They feel the sharp morning air in the backs of their throats and the smell of tart oil paint mixed with the 17th century soil. He feels the familiar shade of the wool-brimmed hat, the way it pushes and pulls the hair beneath it like algae beneath a frozen crust. She feels the wine glass imprinting a glass eye across the bridge and the brow and smells either the herbal scent of soap or maybe she has been drinking to make it through the day and I see her tongue darting out to taste the last drops of tannin. If it were me, I'd be chewing on the crystal rim just for something to do with my nervous mouth. Attempt 5. How does this painting make you feel? I just said so. I feel the urge to gnaw along the edge of the glass and read with my tongue the inscription on the rim. I can tell you about the Egyptian glass 1450 BC, or Miaphori method of Alexandria, the 1,000 flowers, multicolored stems of molten sand shining smooth as ground seashells and oxidized morning light. I can tell you how noble European families went bankrupt for the chance to buy a mirror that would cost more than a master artist's million brushstrokes. When I see this painting, I think of my mother using her savings to buy her mother a gift that wasn't 3 smooth bars of lilac soap. How she walked past the print of The Glass of Wine every day before work in the uterine glow of morning until she could pay for the printed canvas and the gold-painted frame. I think of how my mother felt learning that the things she loved were not universally loved. Maybe good, because then she got to keep them for herself. I grew up with the moss-cloaked man offering the milk-white jug to the dawn-dressed woman above my bed at night. He'd enter my dreams and offer me a glass of wine, brimming a wine glass brimming with bone white milk, and I'd mumble, milk, milk in my sleep and gnaw on the hard plastic of the bottle until I came home crying from elementary school because no one else needed the comfort of tooth-shorn plastic under their tongues. No, reading newer poems is just seeing all of the typos that were there before you had to read them in front of people. So next up is a short poem about manatees. Comprehensive assessment of the manatee. 1. The earth rests on water. The earth rests because it floats, like a log, or something of the sort. 2. Manatees rest 12 hours a day. Manatees graze for 7, with 7 muscles and 2 prehensile lips locomoting the 6 molars they slough out, overturning their gums like fleshy soil or a loop folded over. Manatees have 2 nipples tucked just beneath their armpits. How I tuck my breasts so the valley of my sternum is unshadowed. 3. How often do you think of your body? Each time a constellation vaults over the horizon. How often do you compare it to others? Each time I see an endangered animal or their ghost. What do you want your body to look like? 6 cervical vertebrae and prehensile lips, longer than average intestines, and enough cartilage allowing me to float on air. What do you want from? I want to eat my body weight in yams. I want to be one long muscle like a worm. I want to run along the spine of an ox. I want to hear the propeller coming. 4. The heaviest bodies float. The heaviest bodies float. I do not cast long shadows. I long for valleys and their shadows. This next poem is a growing syllabic. So we begin with 2-syllable lines and it grows all the way until the end. And each of these sections are based on a different medication that I used over 10 years for chronic cystic acne. Yes, manatee poems. This one's not a manatee poem. Chronic seasons, or 11 years of side effects. Tetracycline, hairy, itchy, swollen tongue and rash red hives akin to warts or pustules, white pupilled beads hatching in between the dermis. Orthocycline, depression, retention, dizziness, listlessness, and the barb in the lung, cysts nesting, pockmarking leaves, exploding wet kernels, marbling, modeling mites, weeping sores like spironolactone, bleeding gums or loose stools, bile to fill this cup of inverted nipple, anti-androgen, deflated mind, and acne cysts, only more cerulean green, infested oak, little leaf linden growing defensive, a tree's recoil abutting, Accutane, acceptable threshold of pain, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, body clockwork fearful, preparing to bleed, tar-clotted slugs through the eye of the cervix unseen, condition of the gasp, body a seed tossed in flames and shucked clean, yellow-wept newness, draining cloven, scarred ablutions between thumb and forefinger. Okay, we're on the last 3 poems, and this one is a change in the vibe. The feedback that I've had in previous readings is to tell the audience that you may laugh at this one. Helicopter titties. On a slow day at work, my coworkers talk about breasts, mammograms, and speculums. Our worst IUD experiences, loud and brassy. Who fainted? Who drove themselves home? whose body rejected it like sharpened candy cane from their cervix, whose tits are dense like hot fudge brownies left in the fridge, or if a sports bra could deflate them like a crushed macaron. I used to have titties like cream puffs, airy and whipped, or like a soft custard beneath a caramelized shell. In Czech, cream puffs are called větrničky, adjacent to vrtulníky, windmills, adjacent to helicopters. If I get enough momentum, my titties will roar to life. My coworkers will plug their ears with erasers and princess wave as I hover above the writing center, exit through the skylight, a PSL gripped in my cup holders. My titties will spin so fast they'll whirl whipped cream onto my latte, and I'll descend on a big red XX painted on the roof in jelly. I'll land in a squelch of rhubarb. I'll get a yeast infection next week. Last year, I was prescribed 40 milligrams of omeprazole twice a day and 20 milligrams of famotidine because my stomach forgot how to digest sugar. That's a dose for a grown man with coke-induced stomach ulcers. At least these Mike and Ike-sized pills thought I was a man. My titties shrank to the size of Skittles from low-key trauma, and my ex got disappointing nudes, and they always had to be the big spoon because I was peanut brittle, and they were the hottest souffle I'd ever buried my face in. My titties did grow back, but I no longer had whipped cream titties, no longer had proverbial attack helicopter titties. Now I have protein pancake titties, titties with infomercial ice cream in the center. Where did they come from, titties? Like that box of half-eaten donuts that just appears in the office and no one eats them because there's no note. These aren't helicopter titties. These aren't private jet titties. These aren't the titties I'd started calling beefcake titties and bro titties and boy titties because they were small and could disguise themselves as pecans. They don't crush like a macaron when I snap the elastic of my sports bra. My stomach learned to digest sugar again, and my chest learned how to grow fairground kolačky with big red raspberry nipples. Can I eat my titties? Can I lick around them like a Tootsie Pop until I get to their reasonably sized Tootsie Center? Can I pour protein powder into them and set them to liquefy and become the boys in the yard? Can I install jet engines in a hatchback and make them barbecue titties instead, like turkey burgers and corn dogs or a roast pig that you cut into and it's actually a cake and I have it and I get to eat it too? One more poem here that is kind of about the disabled body and the many pills that we have to take in a day, but make it sexy. Victuals. A bat can survive 2 days without eating before it starves. Another bat will disgorge the blood in its stomach to save the first. I cannot differentiate between danger and excitement, and my body disgorges itself before or after intimacy. I eat 8 pills a day at 7 intervals to repair the damage to my esophagus. I reinvent exposure therapy for the rest. I imagine myself as the white-winged vampire bat who can no longer press on through the silver-cast night, sucking the belly-warm droplets from her mate's muzzle. I adopt the awkward, bounding gait of a species that did not lose its ability to run when it grew wings. I remind myself that the physicality of arousal feels so much like fear, the pounding heart, the static of my nerves, breathlessness. I want to apologize for being a creature gagging on my own mucus, swallowing knuckle-sized pills while you watch, throat blooming, hair ringed Titian in the evening light, your own pains coiled in the contortion of your spine. A healthy bat has never existed. Your body burns a constant pitch. My fingers thread vampiric fever through your hair. I drink from your mouth. 2 creatures starved, our noses rustling leaves, like the 1,000 wings of bats, shuffling through the rafters above. And finally, Ring of Keys. This one was inspired after reading Stone Butch Blues. And also from the title, you can tell a little bit of fun home. There's a mutual recognition, a gait swayed by the fissure in a Birkenstock, the barber's gentle grazing down the slope of our necks, a straight razor shearing the wool from the lamb's throat, lingering the aisles of plastic-wrapped boxer briefs, the callus on the middle finger, that callous way we hold ourselves, teaching each other to glare at midnight strangers. There is an invisible muscle hardening beneath the skin. I see it in the growing layer of dust on upper lips, dolls lingering their thumbs over the early hours. A room of strangers becoming familiar, their joints refigured by instruments of yearning, a hand stretching the octaves between lovers. It's a pinky ring, pit vipers, a bush glittering chlorine and hot sun. It's a horizon scar across the chest and tender goose flesh after praying with the priestess of lightning and good looks. A dip of the chin, a ring of keys, a mirror strung between street lights. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that reading, CE. So incredible. And another full spectrum run of poetry and emotion. I will be thinking about that helicopter titties poem for the rest of the year at least. That was so delightful. Thank you. We will now move into the Q&A portion of our event. So if you have been just jonesing to ask a question of CE or Charles, please raise your hand and ask them yourself, or you can pop it in the chat and you would be and we would be more than happy to read it on your behalf if you're not one for speaking yourself. Something that Gardner and I like to ask our poets to kickstart is always kind of a twofold question. One, what you're reading recently. What's the last thing you read that made you go, wow? And two, what is something you're totally obsessed with right now? Does not have to be poetry related at all, just a general obsession. We oftentimes hear reality TV as an answer to this. A totally fine obsession to have. Either one of you can start first.
Well, I just read a novel that I was fortunately on a 10-hour plane ride for, and I read it straight through because it was so good I didn't even put it down. It's called Your Lonely Nights Are Over by Adam Sass. It's technically a YA book, but I, as an adult who's far from my teen years, I found a lot of joy and delight in it. And it's Adam describes it as Scream meets Clueless, and I felt like that was the best synopsis I could offer anybody. So do check it out. And my obsession lately is actually a video game called Horizon Forbidden West. I just played the first game in the series, and I'm playing the second one for the second time. I love the main character of this game. The storytelling in the game is so amazing. The environments are gorgeous. So it's a world that I really, really enjoy getting lost in.
Let's see. Lately, I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. My most recent collection of essays, lots of hermit crab forms, came out recently from Alex Alberto called Entwined. It's a collection of personal essays on their experiences with polyamory, and I absolutely loved it. And then something I've been obsessed with recently is pickleball, ever since I went on a team retreat with my office job and we all had to learn pickleball as a team building exercise. Oh, and I come from a tennis background, so I was a little like, am I gonna love it or hate it? But I love it.
Thank you both so much. We will now open up the floor to anyone else who has a question that they want to toss out there.
While we wait on that, I'm going to ask my favorite question to ask, which is when you're writing, what is the form you start, or the medium you start with first? Are you a phone notes poet, a Word doc poet, handwriter? Where do you start, and how do you think that informs the poems you're writing? Or do you write in different ways, and does that inform them differently?
I would say that most of my drafting, like just little ideas for poems, like one sentence prompts for myself, happen in a notes app. But like 90% of me actually writing a poem is in Microsoft Word because I type faster than I can think.
My answer is like the same, actually. One thing though I'll note is that I went from like I changed my default font occasionally because I find that even the shape of the letters as they go onto the page and the size of the font can sometimes influence how I want instinctively to break a line or phrase a line. So just to kind of keep the process more dynamic for myself, I like to make those adjustments.
Speaking of Microsoft Word adjustments, if I'm working on something very long, particularly the Sonic Crown, I change the background of like the screen on Microsoft Word to a very like light green because it's much easier on the eyes.
Those are some really practical tips. I'm glad I asked.
Honestly, one of my takeaways from the reading is that CE and I feel like we're very practical poets, and I am thrilled that we were paired together for that reason.
It really does happen that everyone that kind of pairs together really does kind of make sense when they read. And this week has been another great case of that.
No, I actually almost, I remembered like we weren't really purposefully paired together. It was kind of like first come, first serve signups. And very quickly I ran out of dates when I wasn't like out of town for something over the summer.
Dorinda has asked, can each of you talk about how you came to your forms, quiz, crown o sonnet, etc.? Maybe starting with Charles.
Okay. Let me start by saying that I consider myself to be a formalist, and in the broadest sense of the word, not limited only to traditional forms. We're thinking that form is one of the most meaningful parts of the poem alongside its content and its occasion. So it's always very top of mind to me to discover the form a poem needs to take in order to achieve what I want it to do. The quiz poems I started writing very intuitively at a time when I felt life was testing me. And as I know that sounds a little cute and pat, but that's sincerely where it came from. And I started writing prose poems, and then I started writing questions in response to them. But one thing I noticed, and this is one thing that I really loved about writing in that form, is that the voice of the questions was not the voice of the paragraph. And over time, I discovered that in some ways I was anticipating the voice of the critic speaking about what I had just written, or interrogating me as the poet for what I could or could not achieve with the work that I did. And so I feel like those poems are incomplete without a reader, and that is the other thing that really makes me so excited about them. Is everyone's going to come to that poem and have a different reaction and interpret things differently from the questions. So it's really the poet, the critic, and the reader all working in tandem together in those pieces.
Yeah, for me, similarly, I'm very focused on how the poems themselves come together with the form. And I see like that big split between like my first project and my thesis in the MFA versus what I'm working on now. So a lot of the poems I read are from my thesis, the manuscript I'm currently pitching. And a lot of those have like the format of like medical questionnaires. There will be like questions, there will be symptoms, there will be doses of medications, as well as I didn't read any, but lots of prose poems that are journal entries. And a lot of that is kind of like coming of age, adolescence, as well as figuring out one's sexuality, like in the midst of medical conditions and disability. So those forms felt very right for that project. How I came to the sonnet crown specifically is like a little bit not purposeful, even though I really love Robert Hasse's consideration of like what the ode is. Like there's always a sense of yearning, of loss, of a beloved that you're trying to reach, and elements of like, who is that beloved? Is it part of the self? Is it someone else? And there's so many like elements of yearning that I really want to reach toward. But mainly I was finding that a lot of my poem drafts were had stanzas that were like 12 or 13 or 15 lines. And at that point, I was just like, wow, 13 lines. If I add one more line, it's kind of like a sonnet. And then I can keep editing it and it can look more like a sonnet. Especially then when I found that these stanzas were really calling back and forth to each other so well, then I was like, wait, this is a really easy way to help me how to figure out how to write the next poem. If I'm writing sonnet crowns, the last line of each poem will start the next. And it's actually a really good structured practice for me to like really challenge myself to write the long poem as a centerpiece.
All right, I'm going to try speaking. Charles, do you ever answer any of your quizzes? Do you ever answer any of your questions?
I do not.
Okay.
But what a friend of mine took this book, the most age-appropriate poems from that series, to an 8th grade summer school class, and the students wrote in response to some of the questions, and then they also wrote their own quizzes with it. And I was like when I tell you that my heart like exploded into glitter, it would be an understatement for how amazing that experience was for me. So I really entrust the questions to the reader. I think that they can do better work with it than I can.
Thank you both for answering the question and for reading and sharing.
I have a question that both of you have already touched on, but Charles, you said the phrase specifically, and I think this is true to anyone who is trying to teach or educate folks about poetry who maybe have never gone onto that path before, but it is that form, content, occasion, trinity. And with my students this last semester, I was trying to explain that to them, and I drew it up on the board in at this kind of circle, and they were like, oh, so you start with form, because form was the first one that I wrote. And I went, oh my God, I didn't even realize that that is the way that that looks. And then they asked me like, oh, what do you start with then? And suddenly I'm in this hot seat and I'm like, well, it depends. But that's just how it goes teaching freshmen. But it got me so thinking about that. And I wanted to pass that along to y'all. Form, content, occasion. Where do you find yourself starting? Is there a place that you tend to start from? Is it a total big swirling gazpacho of who knows what I'm about to pull out? It might be a little occasion, might be a little content. That's also about as broad and vague as it gets. So if you do not have any strong leanings on that question, that's also fine.
I feel like I always find form last. I get the ideas out, and then the ideas themselves tend to tell me like what form does this poem need. But also like I feel like what really comes first for me is research. I write a lot of research-based poems, and that just really reminded me of Charles's blimp poem, where that kind of fact about blimps would just continue like creating ideas.
That blimp poem took me 5 years to get right. So I kept trying to write it and I kept failing at it. And so this is in some ways to say that like don't give up on those good ideas, because I think if something is resonating with you as a concept for a poem, you may just have to become a better poet over time in order to get there. I think for me, the first draft, I really just go into hoping to discover something that can help evolve the poem. Sometimes I set out to write in a specific form. I know like in April this year when I was writing Poem a Day, I started writing a poem and I was like, oh, this is 3 lines in. I was like, this is a villanelle, and I'm just going to go with that to the end. So it happens like that sometimes, but through revision, I think I really take a look at what those raw ideas are and what container works best for them. But I also think that some forms do demand you to decide to write in them. Like a cento is something that you have to like, you have to say like, I'm going to do this. Or an abecedarian, I think, is another one that you just kind of have to set out on that path. But I think also you can discover in the writing of your poem that it is building its own form. And that's one of the things that I get really excited about happening. So if I see that there's a structure or a strategy that can help carry me through the writing of the poem with repetition or rhyme or how I'm breaking lines, like I will just follow that to see where it takes me.
Thank you both so much. I love those answers. We have time for about one more question. I see all you lurkers. I know you got something. I know you're holding on to it and you're like, maybe I'll ask it. Now's the time.
I do. I'm going to jump in. First of all, thank you both for those wonderful readings. I was just hoping Charles touched on revision. If maybe each of you could please say a little bit more about your revision process and also how you know when something is done.
Do we ever know? Is it ever done? I revised one of the poems I read as I was reading it. So take that for what you will. That's in a book. And I just don't read part of it anymore. All right. So my approach to revision radically changed maybe a year ago. I used to go through and I used to cross off parts of the poem that I thought were weak or needed to be changed. And instead, what I do now is I go through and I highlight everything in the poem that I love and can't let go of. And first of all, that leaves less behind, which is a bigger challenge for me when I write the poem. And then I retype it to be in the voice again, to try to be in the moment of the poem again, and to add and further develop the things that are left into something that's more cohesive. And it has radically altered what my poems look and sound like. So I'm really enjoying that journey. Yeah, those are my answers.
I feel like my revision process is a little chaotic, but then again, like once I started thinking about what I specifically do, I realized I have like practical methods for revising. Because let's see, so one thing, like each document of an individual poem, I keep the entire history of that poem in the back of the document. Like the first draft is all the way at the very last page, and every iteration, everything I cut is still living there somewhere in that document. So even if I had to cut a line that I really liked, it's sitting there for me to use in something else. And while I like to think that, you know, I'll write a poem, close the document for months, come back to it like 6 months later, and then kind of figure out how I'm revising it because I need time away from it. Another thing I do to just keep it in the back of my mind is I print it out and I put it on my fridge. And then when I'm waiting for something to microwave, I like read it over and I like mark something with a pen. I'm like, that word's going away. And over time, over multiple microwaves, like you get revisions.
Thanks. Those are such great answers.
And the other question that was just posted was about where the Blimps poem was published in the Yes American Poetry Review. But also, it may or may not be in a pretty excellent collection of poetry called Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing that you can in fact pick up, which leads us into the final thing that we'll discuss as we draw this wonderful night of poetry to an end. Charles and C.E., thank you so much for sharing your testimonies and crafts and words and manatees and everything in between. I feel like a little manatee floating amid the sweet, blissful, glittery cosmos right now. Where can folks find you if they would like to support you or integrate more with your work? Online.
Well, my website, which we dropped earlier in the chat, www.cewritespoems.com. That has links to my book reviews, my poems themselves, especially if they were published online, as well as my editorial services. But I am very accessible on Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time, and it's the same handle, except there's a dot between the C and the E. I will post that now.
My website is out there. It's the absolute last thing to get updated, so trust it at your peril. But Twitter, Charles_Jensen, and Instagram, Charles Jensen, no underscore, because I got there before the other Charles Jensens. There's a few of them. So yeah, do follow me if you'd like. I think that's the best. Those are the best sources.
Perfect. Thank you
Thank
both
you.
so incredibly much. What a blessing. What a beautiful opportunity tonight. And I could not be more full, more heartful. That will conclude episode 170 of Poets in Pajamas. Thank you so much for attending here and online and thereafter if you're watching this in the year 2130. Please join us again for episode 171, which I believe is going to be in about 3 weeks or so. And we will post more about that on our Facebook and WordPress. Everyone have a lovely night.
Thank you. Thanks for the pajama reading. I love it. It's a great concept. I'm Nadine. See ya.
Oh yeah, that was like 10 out of 10.
When Charles said that his friend brought the questions poems to the students, I felt my cheeks go.
I know. So heartwarming from start to finish. I immediately want to go to the Facebook and make Andy listen to the last poem again.
Yeah. Oh my God. And that blimp poem, it's unclear whether blimps believe in heaven.
The blimp was the most humanizing thing I've ever read, and it was about blimps. Oh, you're
To
cutting
get
out.
that collection a long time ago, and
I actually have it. It's
I
great.
need to get it. That oh my God. I'm so excited to get to see when CE's is published too. I that's got to be
Oh,
snarfed up
for
soon.
sure. I'm buying that for sure. Yeah, I've been a Charles fan for a long time.
CE said, fantastic. Thank you so much.
What?
This was your reading.
What? Oh no, it's
I'm
okay.
so
It's okay.
sorry. I did pal, I totally slipped my mind. Well, you can read any you can read any of the ones that you want to. I did not see that. I'm so sorry.
No, honestly, that was a huge relief because I did not know how to say Janecek. Janecek. It's like, I just did it
Janecek.
again.
Yeah.
But that was honestly no. I was asking like in a nervous way. So believe me, that was a
Yeah.
favor. Thank you.
You never have to lead any reading you don't want to. But whenever you want to lead a reading, it is always available. But no, I think that was such a sweetie little blessing.
Yeah, that was my favorite one so far, I think.